Today we're going to learn about the Shang and Zhou dynasties of China. Now I know it looks like Shang and Zhao dynasties of China, but Shang, Shang, and Zhou, Zhou dynasties of China. So who were the Shang? Now the Shang are going to be not the first rulers of China, but the first that we actually have written and archaeological records of. They're going to rule from 1750 to 1045 BCE, and we believe that the Shang are going to be the first in China to create cities, large population centers. Now, the capital of the Shang is going to be the city of Anyang. Now, let's look at the class system of the Shang before we get into some history with it. Now, of course, we are going to have at the top the king. Now, the king is going to be a military leader. He is going to take power through use of force and conquering the Honghe Valley. Now, because the king is a military leader, it makes sense that his generals, his warlords, are going to be the second in our Shang order. Now, following that is going to be the rich and wealthy aristocrats. Remember, aristocrat is a fancy word for someone who has a lot of wealth. And these people have a lot of wealth because they are going to be the landowners in China. Now, their homes are going to be very, very large. They're going to have fancy tiling on their roofs, beautiful gardens and courtyards, and inside their home, it's going to be furnished with very nice furniture and things made of silk. Now, we're going to contrast them very much to the vast majority of the people in China who are the farmers. Now, the farmers are going to be growing millet, wheat, and rice, and they are going to live incredibly small and simple homes. These homes are typically one room, maybe two, and they are going to be built into the town walls often. Next, we have the merchants. Now, it might seem odd to you that the merchants are going to be below farmers in social classes because merchants are going to be very wealthy. They may have wealth almost rivaling that of aristocrats, but they're not going to be landowners. They're going to be shopkeepers, traders, and merchants. Now, we're going to find out later on that merchants are going to be considered lower than farmers because of Confucian thought, but we'll get there later. Now, next is going to be slaves, which are going to be captured in war. Now, no matter what social class you were in, all Chinese families practice something called filial piety. Let's try saying that together. 1, 2, 3. Filial piety. Uno, dos, tres. Filial piety. Son, filial piety. Now, this whole idea with filial piety is going to mean children going and respecting their parents, listening to them 100%. That means if your papa says jump, the correct Chinese response would be how high. Now, in charge of these families is going to be the oldest male. So perhaps an uncle, a grandfather, or your father. Now, the ancient Chinese practiced something called ancestor worship. They believed that there were spirits in the mountains, rivers, seas, pretty much everywhere. Now, one of the things that the people would do is they would make offerings to them. They would leave food, they would drop precious stones into rivers to offer it to river gods, because they believed if they did not leave things to the gods and spirits, that they're going to go and be mistreated. They'll have bad luck. So part of this worship was the belief that your ancestors could directly impact how your life was. Are you going to know the answers for a test? Perhaps you will if your spirit is going and helping you. So with ancestor worship, the belief is that your ancestors could help you when you are in a time of need. Now, kings were not immune to this. They would go and make sure to try to make contact with the gods and their ancestors before making any important decisions. This is why we have on the left oracle bones. What would happen was King Lyle would go and ask the high priest to go and see, should I go to war? So King Lyle would go to their high priest Domenico, and Domenico would then write the question on a bone. It could be a skull, it could be often ox shoulder blades were used. And they'd write the question down, and then they would heat it up very hot, and then the bones are going to crack. Then, of course, High Priest Domenico is going to go read and interpret the answer from the spirits to King Lyle. Now, what's really cool about these oracle bones is this idea is we're actually going to see our first instances of Chinese writing. We have it on these oracle bones. Now, obviously, the bones aren't the only thing that Chinese writing was being written on, but we don't have the other things lasting. You have to realize paper, or what they would often actually be making on wouldn't be paper, but reeded plants, things like that, kind of like how papyrus is. They'd be writing on that, and that just does not last 1,000 of years. Now, they're going to use pictographs, ideographs, and logographs. Now, a pictograph is something that represents an object. So you draw a picture, and it might be of a coffee cup, and then that picture is probably something looking like a coffee cup, and it represents coffee cups. Ideographs are something that represents ideas. So, for example, when you're going and texting with your friends, you might draw a smiley face emoji. That might be an idea showing happiness or you like something. Finally, logographs are things that represent words. So, if you were to have an image that just went and represented a word, like hmm, like when you see the Nike swoosh symbol, which represents the brand Nike. Here we see on the left some more pictures of oracle bones. It's pretty cool. And then on the bottom here, we can see the evolution of Chinese writing, how it went from the original kind of images where you can see, for example, for fish. In the beginning, it looks a lot like a fish compared to what we see today with the modern simplified Chinese. Now, the Shang are going to be great artists. They're going to do a ton of work with bronze. We're going to see geometric designs, and we're going to see lots of really cool creatures, things like dragons and other ferocious beasts. One of them, the things that they would make are taotai, which are going to be these masks, but these masks are going to be all these different parts of animals together. They're really cool. You might go and have, dragon crest and elephant ears, horns like an ox. Pretty neat stuff. Probably pretty scary if you were to see it at night. And all of these would represent the different beings of the world. Jade is going to be a popular item used to create stuff. Jade is a stone. And one of the things that they also would attribute to these materials would they would represent different aspects of a person. For example, if I were to make a statue of Phoebe and Jade, it'd be, and since Jade is so hard, it would show how wise Phoebe is. Now, something smooth and shiny would certainly stand for someone like Kate, who is also very kind. Now, the Shang were going to be excellent warriors. But the problem is, because they were so good at war, they are continually fighting. And we've talked about this idea, especially when we talked about our Persian and then Peloponnesian wars and how that weakened Greece so that we could then have Alexander the Great just come in and conquer them. That's going to be similar. The Shang are going to be weak because they are always fighting. It's just like if your coach in basketball keeps on having you run suicide after suicide after suicide, your body's tired and you're not going to be able to perform as well in the game. Now, there was another issue. Now, some of this ventures into legend. You know how I love to talk about the different legends, but the kings of the Shang apparently were very, very into being lazy and not going and actually ruling, having fun as opposed to doing their job. So they're treating the poor very badly as they are living these super amazing, well, they don't sound so great once you hear the story, lives, though, where they have just everything they could possibly want. So we see a legend about Shang kings who are going to show, and it's going to show the corruption and how terrible they really were. It is said that the Shun kings were so demanding and just wanted things that one of them went and had a lake dug around a small island. And you think, oh, well, that might be nice having a lake. But you know what this king wanted the lake filled with? He wanted the lake filled with wine. I know, crazy, right? And he had this whole lake filled with wine. And then you know what he liked to do? He liked to go lay and under the shade of trees. But guess what? If he's thirsty, he can go get a drink from the lake. But what if he's hungry? He had it so that hundreds of animals every day would be roasted, and he had the meat just hanging off the trees. So he had wine, water, and meat trees going there. And what he would do is sometimes if he wanted to punish someone, he would go and say, all right, you need to go try to drink my lake dry, which of course is impossible, and it would make the people very sick and die. So the kings are spending all their time going and having this quote unquote fun instead of going and looking after their people. Then in 1045, we have someone named Wu Wang who is going to lead a rebellion against the Shang. And this civil war is going to end the dynasty. This will be the beginning of the Zhou dynasty. Now, for the Zhou to come in and take power from the kings who've ruled for 700 years, there needed to be an explanation, a way of justifying that it was okay to rebel against the Shang. Because the Shang had before, just like every civilization we've already discussed, with the exception of the Hebrews, have said that the gods want us to rule. So the Zhou dynasty, we start seeing something called the Mandate of Heaven, and it has four main parts. The right to rule is granted by heaven. So just like the other previous rulers of all of the civilizations have said, the gods say who should be the ruler. Also, it says that there should only be one ruler. So if Miriam is queen, that means we can't go and have Joey saying he should be the ruler. There can only be one ruler at once. And this right to rule is based on the virtue of the ruler. Now, this is an important idea. With the Chinese belief, they did not think you could be both king or queen and bad at the same time. So if Miriam turns bad, she has ceased to be the rightful queen because the virtues showed that she was chosen by the gods. And so the final aspect of the mandate of heaven is this idea that just because your family line has the right to rule by heaven now doesn't mean it will always be your family line. Another dynasty can take power if you are not going and showing the virtues of a ruler. So, what happens though is this has some implications for what rulers are going to be. Now, their kings and queens are be a religious power, just like our pharaohs were. They are going to have supreme power. Once again, just like our pharaohs, they have absolute power. What they say is the law. But here's the other part. It means people have the right, no, the duty to overthrow an unjust and bad ruler. Now, the Chinese believe that you'd see things like natural disasters, floods, earthquakes happening, famine, and that would be a sign for the people to know that they needed to overthrow their bad ruler.